Nowadays, we have a ton of options when it comes to basketball sneakers. We have high tops, low tops, super high tops, and even self-lacing sneakers like the Adapt BBs here. So if you've ever wondered how we got these from these, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the history of NBA kicks.
There we go. On all black shoes. Air Jordan shoes.
Well, there are some new shoes on the market.
Money's gotta be the shoes.
Shoes.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Well, near the beginning. While the history of the Converse All-Star basketball shoe can be tracked back as early as 1917, the first NBA game wasn't played until 1946, where the New York Knickerbockers took on the Toronto Huskies. Not the Raptors, the Huskies. But yes, the Chuck Taylors by Converse are widely considered as the first sneaker designed specifically for basketball, and for over a decade, it was virtually the only sneaker worn in the NBA, and it was available in just two colorways, black and white. It wasn't until the late 60s that we started to see some players have a little more variety with their footwear. In 1969, Adidas dropped the Superstar, which was later headlined by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and offered up additional support as well as improved traction, while the Iceman George Gervin was the poster child for Nike's Blazer silhouette, which debuted in 1972 and was indeed named in honor of the Portland Trail Blazers, since Nike's campus is located just outside of Portland. Now, while both silhouettes did have a player tied to them and they were both featured prominently in their marketing campaigns, they still weren't officially signature sneakers like you see nowadays, with players like LeBron James, James Harden, and Steph Curry all having sneakers with their name on it. That trend wouldn't actually start until 1973 with the movin' and groovin' Walt Clyde Frazier and the Puma Clyde. While Puma's low-top silhouette is iconic and still officially the first signature basketball sneaker ever, it didn't stray too far from its contemporaries with the similar overall design which defined the era. The next decade was similar in the sense that all the sneakers that were around all looked pretty similar to each other, but compared to the previous era of sneakers, the early to mid 80s offered up even more cushion and ankle support, which assisted the evolution of the game.
Stolen, I think, by the doctor. Yes, he's got it. Here he comes. Way rock the baby to sleep and slam dunk. And yet another Laker turnover.
Sneakers like the Air Force One and Adidas Attitude bolstered their designs with sturdier materials, foam midsoles, and in Nike's case, air. With their brand new technology that was sweeping the nation, Nike decided to take a chance on a 6'6" prospect out of North Carolina named Michael Jordan and gave him his own signature sneaker, which they launched in 1985 and appropriately named them the Air Jordan 1. What made the Jordan 1 unique wasn't necessarily its design, because again, it looked fairly similar to its peers at the time, but what made the Jordan 1 famous was the colors it used and the controversy that surrounded it. The black and red colorway that Nike launched the Jordan 1 with didn't abide by the NBA's guidelines at the time due to the fact that there was too much black on the sneaker, so the NBA banned the shoe and fined Jordan every time he wore them. I'm sure you've heard this story by now, but there is one small detail that not many people are familiar with. As you may already know, despite the ban, Jordan continued to wear the black and red sneaker, and Nike paid the fine that the NBA was enforcing, which they were more than happy to do, since they turned what seemed like an unfortunate event into a marketing strategy for the shoe itself, which skyrocketed its sales, making the Jordan 1 the first must-have sneaker of its kind, with midnight releases that had lines wrapping around the block and an estimated 450,000 pairs sold. However, the dirty little secret that you might not know is the NBA didn't actually ban the Jordan 1. Truth is, the NBA did ban a black and red Nike sneaker, but it wasn't the Jordan 1. It was a similar looking sneaker called the Nike Airship, but Nike just ran with the idea that the NBA banned Jordan's first signature sneaker so that they could use it in their marketing campaign, and over 30 years later, no one's really noticed. It just goes to show us that while sneakers during this era were evolving, there was still a uniformity on how a basketball sneaker should look, but all of that was about to change just a few years later with the arrival of the Air Jordan 3. When the Jordan 3 released in 1988, the NBA was trending upward thanks to what Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Dr. J did in the previous era, and the league was more exciting and explosive than it had ever been before, thanks to the above-the-rim play of the league's top stars.
Here's gonna be a show.
Everybody watching the league was fascinated by the high-flying acts of Michael Jordan, Dominique Wilkins, and Clyde Drexler, and the sneakers that they were wearing were perfectly suited for those air-defying feats. The marketing of basketball footwear during this era was really centered around the idea that if a consumer slipped their foot into one of their products, they would be a step closer at achieving the high-flying acts of the sport's biggest stars, and the design of those products fell hand in hand with the marketing. Like the previous era, the sneakers of the late 80s and early 90s offered up even more support and cushioning to sustain the explosive and high-flying acts of the NBA's biggest stars, but the Jordan 3 was the first basketball sneaker to use an exposed air unit in the heel, which played right into Michael's Air Jordan moniker, while sneakers like the Reebok Pump asked consumers to pump up and air out in direct competition with Nike's line of Air sneakers. The Jordan 3 was also an icon because it ushered in a new era of signature sneakers, since the 3s were the first shoe to don the Jumpman logo in place of classic Nike branding, since Jordan's growing popularity seemed too big to share with the swoosh. It was this visual design choice and success of the sneaker itself that would officially kick off the signature sneaker era of the mid to late 90s. Players such as Penny Hardaway, Allen Iverson, Shaquille O'Neal, Shawn Kemp, Charles Barkley, Alonzo Mourning, Gary Payton, and even Jordan's teammates Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman all received signature sneakers of their own. But despite the boom in the signature sneaker market, the Air Jordan line from Nike was still dominating the competition, and one could argue that it single-handedly created sneaker culture as we know it today. With iconic models such as the Jordan 6, 11, and 13s, Jordans were not only selling out across the nation, but they also became a mainstay in pop culture, and of course a must-have for anyone who played or watched basketball, effectively making them the single most popular line of sneakers the NBA has ever seen. Long were the days where every sneaker looked similar to each other, and really thanks to the Jordan 3, the 90s had some of the most unique and iconic silhouettes in sneaker history. The Air More Up-Tempo, worn famously by Jordan's teammate Scottie Pippen, really epitomized 90s sneaker culture with bold branding and a thick midsole, similar to silhouettes like the Adidas KB8 and Reebok models like the Kamikaze 2 and Shaqnosis. But perhaps the most popular non-Jordan signature sneaker of the 90s was Penny Hardaway's Air Foamposite 1. Originally designed for Scottie Pippen, the Air Foamposite 1 would debut Nike's revolutionary Foamposite material, which gave the silhouette a futuristic look that not only stood out in the 90s, but still looks unique even to this day. It also made history as being the most expensive basketball sneaker to hit the market, with a retail price of $180 in 1997, which for some perspective, LeBron's latest sneaker, which dropped over 20 years later, currently has a retail price of $200. Now, while the 90s had some iconic sneakers that would have a resurgence some years later with retro releases, in the moment, they just couldn't generate the hype and popularity that Nike's Air Jordan signature line created, and when Michael retired after hitting the shot during the 1998 NBA Finals, we were all left wondering who would fill the massive shoes that the Jumpman left.
Championship number 6. Chicago with the lead. That's the last image of Michael Jordan. How magnificent is it?
So the year is 1999, and fans are officially on the search for the next dynasty and superstar to succeed what Jordan and the Bulls did in the 90s and what Bird and Magic achieved during the 80s. Meanwhile, the sneaker community was on a search of their own for the next signature athlete who would officially take the reins as the king of the sneaker world. Now, while Jordan was still officially retired, the Jumpman was being kept alive with exciting young players such as Michael Finley, Eddie Jones, Ray Allen, Darius Miles, and Quinn Richardson. But while those guys were great and fun to watch, they were no MJ, and fans were still craving for a guy to be crowned as the league's next megastar, with both his play and his sneakers. Penny Hardaway seemed like he was the next guy in line with his amazing foam-posite silhouettes, but unfortunately injuries kept him and his sneaker off of the court, which hurt his status with the on-court community, since one of the biggest appeals of collecting basketball sneakers is you get to wear exactly what that player is wearing, and it's kind of hard to develop a connection when that player is barely playing. Kobe Bryant was another guy who was well on his way to megastardom with skills that mirror Jordan on the court, but his unique line of sneakers failed to connect with everyday consumers and sneakerheads alike off of it. For a few years, this search went on, and just when sneakerheads started to get restless, a kid from Akron, Ohio put that anxiety to rest and became the #1 overall pick in the 2003 NBA draft, while also signing a record-setting shoe contract with Nike, which officially made that kid from Akron the heir to the throne. Enter the LeBron James era. For the first time since Jordan retired, fans and sneaker enthusiasts in particular were able to hitch their wagon onto a superstar thanks to a massive marketing campaign that the swoosh centered around LeBron and of course his transcendent play on the court. It also helped that Nike put out a solid lineup of sneakers such as the Zoom Air Generation and one of LeBron's favorite, the Nike Zoom LeBron 3s, which only enticed customers and collectors to buy multiple pairs of LeBron James signature sneakers, since there was a sense that the kid from Akron was destined for greatness. A few years later, Kobe would trade in his 3 stripes for a swoosh, and together Nike and Kobe developed one of the most beloved line of sneakers since the Air Jordan Signature Series, with iconic silhouettes that use cutting-edge technology, perfect for the alter ego we all know today as the Black Mamba. Seeing the success that Nike had with multiple signature athletes, other companies started expanding their roster with young talent in hopes of replicating what the swoosh had with Kobe and LeBron. Derrick Rose became the youngest MVP in the history of the league, while also sporting a signature line of his own from Adidas, which absolutely took off overseas, which only made the presence of sneakers more apparent, and suddenly collecting sneakers became more of a mainstream thing as opposed to the subculture that it was in years prior. This, as well as the success that the league's top stars were experiencing through their kicks, really introduced a new era in sneakers, where you no longer needed to be a preeminent star to not just snag a sneaker deal for yourself, but to also have a signature sneaker you could call your own. The signature sneaker era was finally here, with more signature models than we have ever seen before, which gave fans plenty of options from not just individual models, but to multiple colorways of the same sneaker. But what the sneaker world had in store for us next changed the way shoes are worn in the NBA forever. Before the start of the 2018-19 season, the NBA announced that they would no longer enforce the color restriction on sneakers, which previously required players to have their sneakers consist of team or neutral colors. While the rules were already loosely enforced, the announcement that the players would have free reign on what they wore on their feet led to an array of unique variations, including the star of the current era of sneakers, customs. Players around the league have been seen sporting custom colorways of their favorite sneakers, which allows them to tell a story about themselves, giving fans insight into who exactly their favorite players are, and also allowing the players to express themselves. Not only do custom sneakers showcase the artwork of some amazing artists, but it also engages the fans to tune in on a night in and night out basis to see who is wearing the latest of the latest and who's got the best customs of the night. We're also starting to see some huge developments in the technology that is being used in the sneakers themselves, with last season Nike launching the Adapt BBs, which has an auto lacing feature which can be controlled via your smartphone, while Adidas also debuted a laceless sneaker of their own with the Next Levels. We are far from the days where the Chuck Taylors were virtually the only sneaker available to players in the league, since now the NBA has never been more diverse in terms of sneakers, with brand new models and colorways being debuted what seems like every single night, leading to what is probably the most exciting era of sneakers ever. There really is no telling what the future has in store for us sneaker-wise. There is a world of possibilities, but one thing is for sure, the sneaker will remain one of the most important and popular tools that a basketball player has, which is why it was crucial that we took a look back at what was and is the history of NBA kicks. We hope you guys enjoyed this deep dive into the history of NBA kicks, which if you did, please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NBA kicks, and also let us know what your favorite pair of sneakers is of all time. Mine is probably the Air Jordan 5 or maybe the Air Jordan 1. Love both of them. But let us know what yours is with the hashtag NBA Kicks.